let's jump right on in to some of these games. Let's break some of these bad boys down. We'll start
Yep.
with that Purdue game. Again, the score was 40-29. Just some high level notes. Aiden O'Connell, 536 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. David Bell, 217 receiving. That offense is very impressive. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about that in a second because I want to get your thoughts on how they do things schematically. But the play calling was really good. You can see that they have athletes in space, and they got that matchup they wanted against the Michigan State secondary. And for Michigan State, again, the back end of their defense has kind of been the story this year. It's really the only thing that's held them back at all. And offensively, they're balanced, but they had a couple of critical turnovers, and they couldn't get the plays exactly when they needed them. But let me start off with this. We've seen David Bell now in the two games that they were able to get the upsets against number 2 Iowa and against number 3 Michigan State. He has been huge in those games. But I think it goes more to the guy that you talked about in last week's episode, in Aiden O'Connell, in his ability to run that offense. And they're an offense who's going to make you defend vertically and horizontally. They're an offense that is going to use a screen game kind of as a replacement for their run game because they're not great at it. And they run a lot of 5-out concepts, meaning that the running back's not staying in. He's not even really check releasing. He's just out in the route and the ball's coming out in rhythm on time. What is it that you're seeing from him that makes him so good right now?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Aiden. I love, first off, I love just how pure of a passer he is. I think his feet are phenomenal. I think his upper body mechanics are flawless. The kid spins the hell out of it. And I think a lot of it goes into his story too, why I'm such a big fan of him. The kid came in there as a walk-on, bet on himself, earned his stripes. And now he's been part of, probably even going back a couple years now, maybe 4 or 5 of some of the largest wins in the program's history, or at least recent history. And he's been a major player in all those games. I think he just shows up. I think the guys play for him. And he never puts himself in situations to lose the game. He just always seems to come up with a play when you need it. And that's the type of guy you need. And that's the type of guy you need at a place like that. Similarly to how we've talked about Nebraska, like they need to get a kid like that. They need to get somebody in there that like the whole program is going to play for, go to war for, and always seems to put the team on his back when they need it. And he's done that. And I just can't say enough about him. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he's got a bright future. I think he's got an NFL future for sure. Just with his body type, the way he throws the ball, the way he makes decisions. And I think a lot of the things that you're talking about through the scheme that he's playing in is preparing him to do that. Yep. And I think he's going to be a steal. I think he's a really, really good player.
From some of the folks that I've spoken to, he probably does have an NFL future. And for all the reasons that you mentioned, his ability to throw the football the way that he does is uncommon, I think, in the college football game. And here's the example for me. There was a play where they get all 5 guys out in the route. So the running back is just like, he's not even check releasing. He's gone. He's running a flat route. They got a couple of crossers, a couple guys going deep. And Michigan State, per usual, is running a 6-man pressure. And they like to run their 6-man pressures with a 2 under 3 deep zone coverage concept. And they got 5 guys essentially to block 6 dudes. And I'm telling you, he stands in there as long as he can. Guy right in his face, delivers the ball to a spot where he knows the receiver is going to be. And it was the perfect pass in the face of pressure. Like things are going crazy.
That was early on in the game. That was like the first drive. Like, and what's funny is he beat that, and I don't think Michigan State kind of went away from that. After,
they did. They were doing a lot of straight rushes because the ball's coming out so quick. They can't get home with 6 guys. It's a waste, and there's obviously their secondary is bad. Like, you're killing yourself when you do that.
Yeah. His game. So it's so multiple. Like, even their offense, like you said, they have a lot of different multiple looks in terms of like. They let him work off play action, throw the ball down the field, but they also have that air raid, get the ball out, distribute it to the flats, catch run type game too. And his game just fits all of it. Like, he could probably execute in an RPO type system as well, just because of how sound he is from a technique standpoint and as a passer. And I think, like I said, it's just really cool to watch, and it's really cool to see Purdue I think really figuring him out as a player and what he does well and putting him in those situations consistently. And when you have a guy like David Bell out there, that also doesn't hurt, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and you mentioned the different offensive concepts. That's Jeff Brom as a play caller. He's going to be a guy who will do whatever it takes to attack scheme. And so the looks aren't necessarily all going to be the same from game to game or even throughout a game. But to your point, when you have a quarterback who is sharp and who is experienced and understands football, it really doesn't matter. You talked about the receivers. Obviously, David Bell is the guy that everybody's talking about, but they had a bunch of guys who caught passes in the game. Bell went for 217. Jackson Anthrop went for 80 yards. Milton Wright had 53. King Doru, who's their running back, had 60, and a lot of those were off of the screens. And then Brock Thompson, who is a transfer player, had 3 catches for 22, and it doesn't seem like it was a lot, but he had a beautiful catch in the corner of the end zone. And those guys are well coached. I watched their coach, Jamarcus Shepard, in preseason training camp, and they came out for pre-practice, and they're warming up catching the ball. Guys were dropping the ball, and so he snapped on them, right? And so they go to the next drill, and they're still dropping the ball, and he's like, you know what? On the gun line. And so he had those guys running sprints before practice, and he jumped in with them too. They have a standard there for how they want their offense to be. And on the flip side of that, they got 3 coordinators on defense, and their defense is a lot better than they've been in years past. I mean, it's night and day the way that they're playing ball right now.
Yeah, I mean, they were super solid. And I think so. I want to go a little bit. I think Michigan State played well enough offensively to win the game. I think the 2 things, I mean, they had almost 500 yards total offense, and I think you said it. They were very balanced. Kenneth Walker still played really well. That guy's special. He's explosive.
146 yards.
Yeah, I mean, they fumbled on their first series, I think, of the game, which when you're in a place like Purdue, you got to start fast. And I think the way Mel Tucker's teams, the way that this team is kind of wired is they need that momentum. They need that momentum to get going their way. And when you kind of get a little bit of a needle in the balloon early, I think they struggled to get back, but they did fight back. And then the interception in the fourth quarter, I think, was just a real kick in the nuts, because that was a chance. I mean, they took points off the board, whether it be 3 or 7, you take points off the board. And when you're in a dogfight like that, that's hard. Now, the one thing that I noticed, and you talked about that the catch that the one kid, what's his name? Brock Thompson had, right? When they got backed up, they seemed to be playing like that typical like bracket, like double 2 quarters type look. But even out in the field, when they went to that zone, once they got burned a couple times and they got back into the zone and they tried to cloud David Bell a few times, their DBs, even though they're in zone, and there's an element of like reading the quarterback's eyes, but I feel like they rely too heavily on their eyes. They get their eyes caught in the backfield
all the time,
all the
time,
and it takes their eyes off the receivers and route recognition, and then playing the ball late, as opposed to just kind of, I think they try to their eye discipline isn't great, and I think
they got abused a couple of times in zones. Yeah, and I was watching the coach's copy of the tape. In the wide angle, I think shows it sometimes because you can really see some of the spacing in the back end there. And O'Connell, his ability to use his eyes to get guys off their landmarks was amazing. I mean, he was creating the open pockets in the zone. So I agree with you on that. When you play zone coverage, obviously your goal is to read the quarterback, try to steal one. But if you're a savvy quarterback, as you know, you can use your eyes to manipulate exactly where the coverage is supposed to be, and then you can create what the zone is not supposed to look like. Yeah,
I mean, but like even late in the game, there was David Bell ran a sluggo on the right side of the sideline, or the right side of the field going down, and he turned it into it was an explosive play, made a guy miss, and then ended up like tripping at like the 4 or 5 yard line or whatever. Yep. But they had the safety rotating down to double him, and his eyes were in the damn backfield. Yeah. And the guys already had however many yards throughout the game. So it just is like one of those things where I think I don't know if it's youth, inexperience, I'm not sure what it is, but I think those guys need to sharpen things up, because that is their only Achilles heel. I think they're a very, very good football team still, and they still have a lot of opportunities in front of them to still make their case. So
yeah, I mean, they're in control. If you look at the Big Ten East, they've got the win over Michigan. They got Penn State still out there. If they beat Penn State, they're in control. If they beat Ohio State, they're in control. Like, I mean, this is not a situation where you got to throw the whole thing away. You know, they got a lot of things to play for still. But you're right. If they can't correct the issues that they have in the secondary, especially even this week going up against the Maryland,
Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State. Like they got some challenges.
There's some weapons.
Yeah.